It's time for what America really needs. Faith, family, fitness, freedom. From the home of Pikes Peak, here are your hosts Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan.
Welcome to Faith, Family, Fitness, Freedom on 100.7 The Word. I'm Jason Lupo, sitting here with my co-host Aaron Lujan.
Hello.
And our very special guest, Dave Wilson, who is running for district attorney here in El Paso County, Teller County. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
So I'm doing great. Tell me, what enticed you to run? What enticed you to get in this race? Why are you running?
I would say voluntold is a better term. I was sitting at home, relaxing, 2 days before assembly, minding my business. I'm coming out of 8 years of dependency and neglect, representing parents having their kids taken away. And I was at 95 cases. I got down to 2 cases. I told my wife I need a new season. I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to relax. And then my phone starts ringing Wednesday night. Assembly was Friday. And I don't answer calls that I don't recognize. So next thing I know, I'm getting voicemails. I listen to one and somebody says, hey, you need to run for district attorney. So I turned to my wife and said, they want me to run for district attorney. They're crazy. She goes, well, call them back. I said, well, you're crazy. And so I talked to a few people. They said, we need an alternative. You need to run for district attorney. And these apparently were people I helped during COVID who were fighting mandates, vaccine, masks, things like that. And I said, well, I've got to pray about it. They said, well, don't take too long. You have to be registered by noon tomorrow. And so I prayed about it. The next morning, all I kept hearing was just the fact they want to nominate you, you've already won. And I said to my wife, I guess I'm running for district attorney. And I'll be honest, when I first thought about it, I'm like, I don't know that I want to do this. And we went to assembly on Friday. Apparently, none of the delegates were going to show up because it was only my opponent, and he had petitioned on. He didn't go to assembly. But they started putting out the word. There was over 130 people out of 230 potentials. And Lindsay Moore nominated me. I got the full vote. I did a speech, lots of applause, lots of thank you for running, and here I am.
So I was actually in St. George, Utah when I found out that you were running, and I was super excited, and I started calling everybody that I knew that was a delegate that I had already told like, hey, you can show up, you cannot show up, but really there's nothing to vote on because nobody's stepped up. And then we had a candidate step up, and I'm super glad that you're in the race, so I appreciate it.
And I hear that a lot.
Dave, what background do you have? What have you been doing up until this point?
So I grew up in New York. I spent 20 years in the Army as an Army JAG. I did the first half of my career, I did a lot of prosecution. I worked as a trial counsel, prosecuting soldiers. Then I was a defense counsel for about 1.5 years. Then I worked for about 2 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office as a special assistant U.S. attorney, prosecuting civilians who committed crimes on Fort Stewart. And then the second half of my career, the Army sent me to get a master's in intellectual property and information technology. And I went to NSA. I was the legal advisor for what's now Cybercom and helped stand up Cybercom, and then advised combatant commands on cyber attacks, computer network operations, space operations, satellite operations. When I retired, I decided, hey, I want to do cyber. So I got my CISSP, which is the Certification for Information Systems Security Professional, and spent 6 years speaking around the country and around the world at cyber conferences. But the Army never taught me how to sell anything. So after 6 years of being lean and not really getting very far, other than I love speaking at conferences, my friend said, hey, Dave, they're opening the contracts for the court. You want to get back in the courtroom? I said, yeah, I love the courtroom. Not knowing I'd be doing dependency and neglect cases representing parents having their kids taken away. And so it was, and I went from 4 cases the first month to 6 months later, I had 95 cases. And I asked the court clerk, is that normal? And she looked at me and said, no.
Is this at the U.S. Attorney's Office?
No, this is downtown in the courts off of Tejon, across from
this is El Paso County?
Yes.
So so you are a public attorney at the El Paso County?
Yes.
Okay. And then so these parents are losing their children by the judge, order of the judge?
The DHS goes and gets an order from a judge to remove the kids for whatever reason. I thought going into it, there was two assumptions I had, that there was going to be a lot of abuse which there wasn't. It's mostly neglect. Parents who are addicted to drugs, living in cars and tents, can't get out of their own way, so they can't take care of their kids. The other thing I thought was, oh, these people just want to party and get high. And I realized within 6 months, they're not partying and, just having a good time. They're dealing with significant trauma. And in a lot of cases, it's generational. So it's just cyclical over and over. And they just, they're like stuck in this rut. And meth is really hard to get off.
So we have drug addicted parents that are unable to take care of their children, and the judge is ordering the DHS to remove them from the parents, essentially.
It's supposed to be temporary. The goal of the law is reunification. So the kids are removed, or sometimes they're left in place or placed with a relative, and then parents go through treatment. They have counseling, they do drug testing and visits, and then try and get back on their feet.
These poor children. So where do the children go once they're apprehended by DHS?
If there's no family, they go into foster care.
What is usually the case? Or they end up going into family or foster care? Majority of the time.
I would say it's a mix, 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I won't go into all the details, but my wife and I have a similar story for family on her side. And we now have an 8 and 9-year-old. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I know that God puts us in some places sometimes we don't expect to kind of change our opinions on what's going on, things like that. And I actually owned an ankle monitor company for a long time, and was a licensed bondsman as well. So
I'm actually a lifelong customer. Thank you.
Are you?
No, I'm just joking.
Not of me. Not
of the ankle
me.
monitor.
All right, we're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to finish up this conversation with Dave Wilson.
Full Armor Sports Teams has a new facility for after-school youth programs. It's located at 2380 Montebello near North Academy and Union, with 2 pools for swim lessons and swim teams, a weight room for powerlifting, conditioning, and more. Full Armor Sports Teams is a Christ-centered and family-oriented organization bringing the youth of Colorado Springs together. For more info on after-school and homeschool programs, go to fullarmorsportsteams.com or call 719-629-SWIM.
Welcome back to Faith, Family, Fitness, Freedom on 100.7 The Word. I'm Jason Lupo, sitting here with my co-host Aaron Lujan, and also our very special guest, Dave Wilson, candidate for district attorney. Dave, you worked in the military. I think we need to hear it. We have to hear the famous line from A Few Good Men. Can you do it for us?
You can't handle the truth.
Have you ever used that in a courtroom?
I haven't. I've used other lines, though.
Is Jack Nicholson still alive?
I think he is.
I think he is.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him at a
Probably.
Laker game in a really long time, so I'm wondering.
I haven't watched the Laker game in a very long time.
Okay, fair enough.
Apparently, De Niro's still alive. But.
Apparently.
Wow. Well, can you promise that if you get elected, you'll use that line at least once?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. We got that promise.
I've used more lines from my cousin Vinny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that your go-to movie?
The two
for
Utes.
Okay. All right. I feel like you can throw in some Frozen. Like, just look at them and be like, hey, I think you just need to let it go. Which, by the way, our current district attorney might be letting a few too many things go.
Speaking of letting go.
Yeah,
Let's talk about
letting
it.
way too many things go. I think he's been watching the movie Frozen way too many times.
Is that the problem, Dave? Do we have a district attorney sitting in that office that is simply not prosecuting and allowing law and order to escape El Paso County and Teller County?
So since being asked to run, I, like a lot of people, and one of the things I just put on my webpage was, remember when you could vote for elected official and you trusted that person and you didn't have to monitor them and second guess everything they did or said? That's who I'm going to be. Once I'm elected, you can trust me, and I'm going to do a town hall at least once a month, not just here. I've been going out to the cities out east and everything. I'm going to start going around and talking to people because I want to hear what the issues are and how we're doing. And what I keep hearing on the campaign trail is, oh, thank you for running. We needed an alternative. Or I hear, who is the current DA? And that was my question when I was asked to run. I didn't know. So the impression is he's mostly absent, except when you dig down into some of the stories of things that are going on. One I have personal knowledge of because I was going to represent the family I have to find him another attorney since I'm running for district attorney. But there's been a lot of not good stuff going on with this office. So,
yeah, I know that story. I know that we probably need to keep it under wraps, but there's definitely some crazy things where it appears that we are so concerned about prosecuting quote unquote hate crimes, quote unquote social justice issues. And this is keep in mind, the Republicans have control of the sheriff's office. They have control over the El Paso County Board of Commissioners. They have control over, the district attorney's office. And yet we're still prosecuting these crazy crimes that don't make sense, that aren't really crimes, that are, infringing on people's rights. But then we're letting violent sexual offenders out.
Yep.
On probation. We're letting them out. We're plea bargaining everything down. And unless it's going to suit somebody's publicity, like the Staunch case, then it's just being plead out. And so, why do you think that we have so many plea deals that are going on in El Paso County instead of actually prosecuting these crimes?
This is what I've noticed. First of all, a plug for the grassroots candidates. If you see a big sign, typically it means big money, big influence, and those people are going to be told what to do and how to do it. And I suspect that's what's going on here. Because it's, like I put on my website, I don't even have to attack the incumbent or my opponent. I just pull the news articles and put them on my webpage, like the Club Q shooter. Well, I'm sorry, a third grader could have prosecuted that guy. And then when you look at the news articles surrounding that, like an AP article I put on my website, they ignored the red flag laws. They had this guy in jail because he threatened to kill his grandparents and his mother, and they didn't prosecute. Now, I'm not going to get into the details whether they had enough to prosecute or not. Somebody said they didn't think they did, but at least make the attempt. Go after the red flag laws, take the guns away. And again, I'm not an advocate of taking people's guns away, but if you have somebody who's threatening to kill other people, maybe that person shouldn't have a gun. And apparently he threatened to kill them with a bomb. So guns aren't the problem. It's the people who are the problems. But also there's a guy who was incarcerated for attempted murder, who was reduced to aggravated assault. That's fine. Maybe they didn't have the elements for attempted murder, but his bail was reduced from 100,000 to 10,000. And again, this is another article from the media. Reduced, he was released, committed more crimes, got back in, reduced, released. And the DA's office said, oh, we objected. Well, the reporter asked the court clerk, who said, no, they didn't object at all. They actually supported it in at least one occasion. So, and these are just articles I'm reading in the media. So I don't really have to say anything. Just read the media, look at the record. If you're happy with the current status quo, then vote for status quo. If not, then I'm the alternative. So,
How are you going to be the district attorney? For example, in the case of the Club Q shooter, how would you have prosecuted?
Well, I would have dealt with him before. There was a lot of, forgive the pun, there was a lot of red flags with this guy before all that. He had a lot of issues going on. And I thoroughly believe in alternative justice. My understanding was this guy, he didn't go into the club to kill a bunch of people. He was going after the owner who had harmed him when he was younger. So he had a lot going on in his head.
Interesting. I didn't know that part of the story, but that's for another day, another time.
Yeah. And, if that could have been recognized, maybe he could have gotten into some sort of treatment program or so. Obviously, he was hurting. When he couldn't, I'm told when he couldn't find the owner, then somebody said, oh, he's got a gun, and then he opened fire. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know all the facts. This is just what I read in the media.
But you said you would have dealt with him beforehand. So what crimes did he commit, and how would you have prosecuted beforehand?
Well, he threatened to kill his family.
So at the point of him threatening to kill his family, at that point, you would have basically, would he been able to have been incarcerated? How does the law work when you make threats like that?
I would have had him indicted and said, look, we have alternatives for you if you're willing to work with us. If not, we'll just prosecute you and put you in jail.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned red flag laws. I just want to clarify, what is your stance on red flag laws?
Well, first of all, I agree with most of the sheriffs around the state. Telling law enforcement, go knock on this guy's door because somebody reported they have mental illness and they have guns. You got to go take their guns. The sheriff's department said, hey, that's dangerous for my officers. I'm not going to go knock on somebody's door and say, hey, we heard you got mental illness. Give us all your guns. That doesn't make sense. So you need to look at each individual case and figure out what's going on. And was it a false report? In most of the work I do with dependency and neglect cases, there's a report. Is there any investigation? No. DHS doesn't investigate. They just go and get an order based on so-and-so said and take kids away. That's my heartache with that system. But similarly, you can't do that where you're impacting somebody's rights. You better have good evidence and do an investigation. And there's too little investigation going on these days.
Even if you do an investigation, I mean, like, we are obviously becoming a system in the United States where you are guilty until proven innocent.
Yes.
As opposed to the way that it should be, which is innocent still proven guilty. And so to take guns away from citizens before they've been prosecuted, before they've been tried by a jury of their peers, is a clear constitutional violation. I don't think there's any reason.
Yeah.
If you want to take somebody's guns, go prosecute them.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to prosecute them, you can't take their guns.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about the red flag laws. You know, you got to have due process at some point. What do you see as kind of the big issues in the district right now that need to be attacked?
Primarily, the porn and the filth in the schools. Children are not being protected. Too many woke agendas dictating what we do and how we do things. That should not have any business in the district attorney's office. There should not be any politics, no woke agendas, no agendas at all. I don't have any big donors. I don't have anybody telling me what to do. I'm going to run the office the way I want to and I think is best. And that's why I want to have town halls frequently, because I want to hear what the people have to say and what they're concerned about. That should guide what's going on in the community and the DA's office.
So as the district attorney, how would you address the issue with the woke agenda and the pornography in the school system?
Investigate it. My understanding is the current DA's office did not investigate. In fact, I saw the letter, the 9-page response to the letter showing the porn in the schools. And as far as I'm concerned, it was a complete dodge. It was circling around.
Who's responsible? The school board members?
For the porn in the schools?
Yes. Who gets prosecuted at the end of this?
School board members have a responsibility. What I didn't see in the evidence was who introduced that porn books into the schools. That's why it needs to be investigated.
Are these school board members held at an accountable individually, or is this like a situation where just the district gets sued and it's just a drain on taxpayers?
Again, it's going to depend on the investigation, because you have to see who has individual knowledge and has had a part in it versus they just ignored it and didn't pay attention and didn't really know what's going on.
So we talked about the schools. Other issues are front and center for you?
Since 2020, I've always been concerned with election integrity. Okay. If I'm not trusting that my vote is going to count, then something's wrong.
How would you handle that?
Investigate it. And
Dominion?
The ballots. I represented Tina Peters in her recount lawsuit, and we had an expert ready to testify. We kept getting thrown out on procedural issues. This expert is a Democrat. He wrote 20 lines of code to flip an election. He thought he was doing it for agencies for overseas. He said Republicans and Democrats for years have been sharing this. They can literally flip a vote on a machine.
So I was actually written a not so nice email from our current county clerk and recorder, who claimed that affidavits which were produced after the last election were never given over to the county clerk and recorder's office or the DA. And we all know that is 100% false, and he's ignoring the fact that there's tons of affidavits of issues with election integrity. what would you do? I mean, can you prosecute the former DA for ignoring this? Can you prosecute the former and current clerk and recorder for ignoring this information?
It sounds good and potentially, but again, that for me, that's playing political games. And I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to try and fix things, not go after people. I had the former clerk and recorder come to an event. I didn't know who he was. And he started getting loud with me when I said, I'm looking at election integrity. And he started yelling that affidavits aren't evidence. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been an attorney for 34 years. If somebody signs something swearing to it that they will testify to this, that's absolutely evidence. So the first thing that came to my mind was, if you have to yell, then you're hiding something. If you can, discuss it with me calmly and rationally and show me the evidence, okay, I'll listen. But nobody's showing the evidence that elections haven't been tampered with in the past. So.
Yeah, and when you have to go on the defense and you're sitting on your back heels trying to throw punches, claiming that everybody else is coming after the clerk and recorder's office, and trying to justify everything that you do, there's got to be something there. Yeah,
well, and here's another example. So with Tina Peters' case, I wanted to sue under contract breach. In order to have a recount, you have to request the recount be done. The Secretary of State or the county, if it's just one county, has to tell you, okay, this is how much it will cost, and then you pay that money. That all has to happen within a week or less. So then you have a contract. You requested, they told you how much, you paid that money. The recount rules are literally written in the law. Well, in Tina Peters' case, the Secretary of State wrote their own rules for a recount and had Dominion help with those rules. That was a breach of contract, and that was so suspicious and wrong. And all they did was they created fake ballots and threw them through the machine. Even those ballots didn't show an accurate count. So they tried to jerry-rig it as far as I was concerned. And
then they put Wayne Williams in charge of their elections.
Yeah, there's
over
a lot
there
of
in
conflict of interest there as well.
Which he was sitting on the board of Runbeck Ballot Services, who produces the ballots for all of Colorado. Yeah. All right, we're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to wrap up this conversation. Hang with us for 30 seconds.
Thanks for listening to Faith Family Fitness, a presentation of Full Armor sports teams. Teamwork is at the core of any successful organization. At Full Armor Sports, led by national champion coach Jason Lupo, a Christ-centered approach to sports fundamentals and fitness has earned his company the respect of athletes and their parents. Full Armor Sports is committed to helping youth in our community experience growth through sports and to strive for improvement and excellence. Further, youth compete as individuals coming together with a sense of teamwork, camaraderie, and support for one another. At Full Armor Sports, the reality is achievements, failures, wins, and losses eventually fade away. But the bonds team members form through competition evolve into relationships lasting forever. Learn more at fullarmorsports.com.
Welcome back to Faith, Family, Fitness, Freedom on 100.7 The Word. I'm Jason Lupo, sitting here with my co-host Aaron Lujan and our very special guest, candidate for district attorney, David Wilson. One of my biggest frustrations of our district attorney during the COVID crisis, and this was the former district attorney, not the current district attorney, was the unwillingness to really make stances public. And so we had our DA behind closed doors saying he wouldn't prosecute issues if people broke the COVID laws. And we had our sheriff's department saying they wouldn't arrest for breaking quote unquote sheriff law or the COVID laws, which they weren't laws because they were passed by executive order. But I want to make sure that we have public officials who are public in their stances so that everybody that owns a business, everybody that is living in the county feels comfortable enough to go, you know what, these are unconstitutional. We're not going to follow them. And I have the confidence that I'm not going to be prosecuted for it or arrested for it. David, what's your website?
My website is www.david4forda.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on this show, David. Once again, David Wilson, candidate for district attorney. If you want to find out more or you want the link to his website, go to faithfamilyfit.org. and you will find this episode and all of our past episodes. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next Saturday at 9 a.m.